Owning a business isn't just an occupation, it's a legacy for those you want to pass it on to. At Sandy Spring Trust, succession planning is one of the many aspects of wealth services we provide. We'll work with you one-on-one to answer questions and advise you on valuations, transfer of ownership, and much more. What's your next financial destination? Visit sandyspringbank.com/wealth. Wealth and insurance products are not FDIC insured, not guaranteed, and may lose value. Wealth products offered by Sandy Spring Trust, a division of Sandy Spring Bank.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock and The Pavilion, the horse racing and cricket podcast, with me, your host, Stephen Wallace. On today's show, I am rounding up the men's T20 World Cup with the show's cricketing expert, Roland Butcher, the former England international who watched the final live from the Kensington Oval, Barbados. After 55 matches across the Caribbean and the United States, all packed into the month of June, the favourites India came out on top after a dramatic 7-run win in the final against South Africa. Roland gives his opinions on the winners India, England's performance as defending champions, the rise of Afghanistan, and answers listeners' questions. Plus, with the England versus West Indies test due to start at Lord's, Roland previews the 3-match series. Hello, Roland. Welcome back to the show and to the UK.
Thank you, Stephen. As you know, it's always a great pleasure to come back to the UK to see my kids and get involved with the cricket, and delighted to be back.
Well, thanks for joining me to review the men's T20 World Cup. And before we go into any detail about the competition, what are your reflections about 2 weeks after the final?
Well, I think after 2 weeks after the final, I think on reflection, I would say that, the best team won the competition in India. It was unfortunate for South Africa, who really, when they seriously look at it themselves, they would realize that they should have won the World Cup because, they got themselves in really good position to win that game. Coming into the last 5 overs, they needed 30 or 30. I think they still had 5 or 6 wickets in the bag. So at that point, it should have been a foregone conclusion. I remember sending a text message to my friend Sean Baluji in UK, who's a South African, and told him congratulations, only to 2 or 3 overs later to have to retract that statement. But I would say overall, India were the better side in the competition, the better balanced side, and they were probably the more prepared of the bigger teams as well.
So the big question then, did the South Africans choke in the final?
I wouldn't say they choked. I think there were a couple of excellent things that happened in those final 5 overs. I think the first one really was, very good captaincy by Rohit Sharma, realizing that the game was really slipping away. And at that point in time, when he brought back Bumrah for that over, I think it was also probably an over too earlier than he normally would have done. But he realized that he needed a wicket. I think the other good thing that happened in India's favor was that, Pant realized that they needed to take the sting out of the game, and he suddenly developed a cramp, which I don't think was really a cramp, but it was to slow the game down because South Africa were really on the go. And at that time, really, Klassen was winning it easily for South Africa. And those few minutes, I think, affected Klassen because I think the first or second ball was wide and outside the off stump. He had a big chase at a wide one, got a nick caught behind, and that changed the game. So that's 2 bits of good fortune. And then the third one really was that catch by Yadav on the boundary. Had that gone for 6 again, South Africa would have been home and dry. So I wouldn't say South Africa choked. I would say India got everything right. The bowling change, the delay in tactics, and then that fantastic catch. Those 3 things combined really to beat South Africa.
And Bumrah, how do you have an economy rate of 4.17 in a competition?
Well, he's phenomenal. At any part of the game, he can bowl up front, he can bowl in the middle, he can bowl at the death. A terrific bowler. Not very often he gets collared by anyone. And, so really it was no surprise how he performed when it mattered. And the other thing that I think mattered really was, Virat Kohli showed that, he's a quality player, that when things are really tough and he needed to get his head down, that he could do it. I mean, he had a fairly lean tournament, if you take it as far as his standards are concerned. But in that final, so that they lost early wickets as well, India. So another one. And they could have been in serious trouble. But again, he was very masterful. So, when you think about it, really, India had some game-changing players on their side. And I think Kohli and Bumrah, with their experience, showed that India was a team that was going to win.
Yes, India 34 for 3 at one stage in the final.
Yeah. Things were looking good for South Africa. To be quite honest, I think South Africa started well. They took a good catch to get rid of Rohit Sharma. They got some momentum. They were really buoyant. Things were going well. They just needed that fourth wicket. If they got that fourth wicket, I think they could have really been home and dry. But at the end of the day, I don't think excuse me. I don't think South Africa can hold their heads down and think that they performed badly, because I think they had an amazing tournament. To go unbeaten to the final when nobody at the start of the tournament really gave them much of a chance, was fantastic. So they left the tournament with a lot of credit, and they should have left Bridgetown with that trophy as well.
You mentioned that you thought India are the best balanced side of the tournament. They won all their 8 matches. They've got a superb bowling attack, haven't they?
Yeah, they've got all the areas covered. If you think, in terms of their batting, they've got a lot of experience. They've got a lot of skill in their batting. In the middle order, they're very, very strong in the middle order. And then when it comes to the bowling, obviously the bowling department is covered with both pace and spin. So, I think they were the best balance of the sides. And, at the end of the day, their quality shone through.
Let's move on to England. I've got quite a few questions from listeners about England. Only one win against a test-playing nation, which was the West Indies. The only other victories were against Oman, Namibia and the USA. Struggled against Scotland. What went wrong for England?
Well, yeah, I think what went wrong for England was what went wrong for most of the big teams. And I would include Australia, West Indies, Pakistan in that. I don't really believe that those teams had the sort of preparation that was required for the magnitude of a World Cup. In the case of England, I will start with England first. England did the right thing by, to pull in the top players out of the IPL to prepare for this World Cup. But where did they prepare? They prepared in England for a tournament in the Caribbean. By playing Pakistan in a rain-affected series. Now, I believe that was a major mistake. I would honestly say that the hardest place in the world to adjust to pitches is the West Indies at this moment in time. There's no question about that. And any team playing in the West Indies really needs to get in the West Indies as early as possible and get as much practice as possible so they can acclimatise to the pitches. So England warmed up in England for a tournament in the Caribbean on pitches that were not going to be, flat. And in the end, that really affected them because it meant that their performances were very inconsistent. The same can be said for the likes of Australia. Came into the tournament again. They arrived late into the Caribbean. Pakistan arrived late into the Caribbean, and those are big teams, and they struggle. And as a result, the smaller teams, who perhaps would have prepared a lot better, were able to push the bigger teams. West Indies suffered the same fate as well. Too many players sitting on the bench in the IPL, not being able to come together as a team early enough to build that teamwork that's required to win the tournament. They remained a team of individuals, good individual players that were short of practice, and like the other 2-3 teams that I mentioned, had the same fate.
Just focusing a bit on England, they don't appear to be a side that play well on the low, slow wickets, which you get in the Caribbean.
Well, no, because as I said, when you're playing on those wickets, you have to prepare well. You can't turn up a week before and expect that you're going to conquer those conditions. No, you can't. Obviously India, over the years, they've had to conquer all sorts of conditions. They were fortunate that most of their players, if not all, were regular starters in the IPL. So, they had good match practice. A lot of the teams came short of match practice. The West Indies had probably 10 players in the IPL, but 3 played regularly, which was Russell, Pooran and Hetmar. And for West Indies, only 2 played for West Indies because Hetmar didn't play. So, they were playing with 9 players who most of them were sitting on the bench, inactive for 2 months, right, practicing in the nets. But is that preparation for a world tournament against the best? Probably not. Did
England pick the wrong team when they played India? Because we played 4 seamers in that game at Guyana.
Well, not, I think England, when you play Guyana, you don't play 4 seamers in Ghana, not even in a test match. Guyana does help the spinners. There's no question about that. So they certainly got it wrong there in terms of that selection. You can't play 4 seamers against any team in Ghana. Your spin options. And if anybody also knows the entire West Indies, that really to do well, you've got to have a competent spin team. Anytime you come to the West Indies, really you should pack your team with spinners because those are the ones who have all the success. And, England, played a lot of seam bowlers. Sometimes even during the tournament, when the spinner should have bowled, they didn't really bowl them.
Clearly, England should have known that, though, going to Guyana.
Well, I mean, I knew it. Certainly they should have known it. I mean, they've been in the Caribbean enough, especially the last few years. I mean, they're there on a regular basis. 4 white ball series, they were only there last November in the Caribbean. So they should have a very good idea of the type of surfaces. And, Ghana is not a high-scoring place for T20. It's always a bit of a struggle. That selection, I think, that was wrong, and it cost them dearly.
On a couple of England players who did well, Jofra Archer and Phil Salt.
Yeah, well, I mean, Phil Salt was continuing where he's left off probably the last year and a half. Pretty dominant at the bat, at the top of the order. He did pretty well. I think when it mattered, Adil Rashid was also very good, but lots of experience. Butler in patches, he didn't really seem himself. The only time he really expressed himself, I think, was against USA, where he and Salt really just went crazy. But I think generally, and the fact that I think Johnny Bairstow was struggling a bit with the bat, I think that sort of hampered the team as well. There was also one game where Moeen Ali didn't. It might have been the same Guyana game that Moeen Ali didn't bowl. That was strange.
What did you think to Jofra coming back to international cricket? He got 10 wickets and had pace as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a good sign for him coming back. I guess he would have been a little bit nervous, just wondering whether the old injury would reoccur. Well, I think generally, he bowled probably as well as he could in the circumstances. That's good for England, I guess, going forward. I would perhaps like to see him play some red ball cricket. I'm not sure if he's playing for Sussex, but I think England would perhaps want to get him back also for a Test series at some point. I'm hearing he's not going to play this year, but that seems a bit strange to me. But yeah, he made a good comeback, and I think Chris Jordan, who I was a little bit surprised that Chris actually was making the trip, because you think previous to that he wasn't really part of the setup, but obviously got the nod, and I thought he did well. Obviously that hat trick as well.
Yeah, Chris Jordan, 10 wickets in the tournament. So overall, do you think England were lucky to get to the semi-finals? Did they just scrap their way to there because they, as I said, only beat one Test-playing nation?
Yeah, I think they were very lucky. The game against Scotland, really Scotland had them on the racks. That could have been a very difficult game for them. They would have had to play exceptional cricket to get out of that one. But yeah, I think they were lucky to get to the things fell in place for them to get to the semi-final. Yeah.
I've got a few questions about England. Some of them you might have already covered, but let's go with someone you know, Richard Merriman, who yesterday was leading the England over 60s, actually, to a narrow defeat against Pakistan by 4 wickets. And I don't know how many Richard got, so I was trying to look that up, but I'm sure we'll find out. But what do you think are the strengths of the England squad, and what has emerged as their weaknesses?
I think the batting was the weakness in this tournament for sure. They didn't really get the consistency out of the batters that they wanted. I think those 5-6 batters really needed to be a lot more consistent. In the bowling department, I think at times they were, a little bit short in the bowling. Liam Livingstone had to bowl in quite a few games and bowl quite a few overs. As I said, Moeen Ali really perhaps didn't bowl as much as he should have done in the circumstances. And again, with a bat, wasn't that consistent. And, Mark Wood was fairly inconsistent as well. So I think when you really dissect the England performance, it was too bitty. They would be the first to admit that they were not at their best. Just couldn't get the rhythm of playing well and getting the results. And they were always scrapping. There was always one game away from going out of the tournament. And then it reached that point where they did go out of the tournament.
David Fountain, local to me here in March, has said, do England is it time for an England reset with selection and tactics?
Listen, at the end of every World Cup, especially if you haven't done particularly well, there's usually a change. A lot of the countries, they change the coach or they change the captain or the lineup. I suspect really, England's team has to change. I don't think they will go forward with this set of players to the next World Cup. In 2 years' time, I think now they've got to really reassess the situation and try to put together a group that in 2 years' time will peak. So I believe, there will be changes, and I think a number of players will probably find themselves on the sideline.
Is there a need for a change in captain and coach?
Well, again, that's going to be a question that will be asked. I would imagine probably Josh Butler, he's probably reassessing his own situation as captain. Has he been as effective as a player while he's captain? Probably the results would probably say no. I think what the captaincy has done for him is try to make him a more careful player, because he was not really the explosive Butler that he was the one really trying to back time, but maybe there's a time for him to return to the old Butler who was just carefree and just batted and put pressure on the bowlers and And maybe he might also enjoy doing that again without the weight of captaincy on his shoulders.
And what about the England coach, Matthew Mott?
Well, life can be short. I mean, he won a trophy not long ago. So, but as I say, a day, a week in sport is a long time. So who knows? I believe that he'll get some more time. Would it make sense now, I guess, to change the coach and captain and personnel for a tournament in 2 years' time? Perhaps not. I think he will get time to run at the next World Cup.
So a mark out of 10 for England at the 2024 Men's T20 World Cup?
I would say maximum 6. And that's perhaps being generous to them. I think they would agree also that any mark either side of that 6, they may well be happy with, but nothing more than that. I think it was an average performance in a competition that I'll be honest with you, not just only England perform averagely of the big teams. I mean, a lot of the big teams were average. They were very average. Hence the like of Afghanistan doing it really well. USA, some of the other smaller nations doing well also. So, it was an average, very average World Cup for England. I'll go as far as to say really below average.
It was also below average, as you've just said, for teams like New Zealand and Pakistan.
Yeah. And I'd put Australia in there as well. I mean, those big teams were average. And I maintain that the reason they were average is because their preparation was not great. I don't think they prepared really well for this World Cup. I think other things were more important than the World Cup. England and Pakistan arrived in the West Indies less than a week before the first game. I mean, that is, Australia played a warm-up game with 9 players because the others weren't in the Caribbean. That's not preparation for an international tournament like the World Cup, which is supposed to be. I couldn't see that happening with the Football World Cup. Football World Cup, teams would be in the country of the World Cup. They would have a base set up weeks before. They'd be there preparing for when the bell rings. This World Cup was not like that. It was people came when they felt like it, and quite often, too late to be able to prepare to play well. And in England, Australia, New Zealand, Pakistan, they fell into that category, and West Indies.
One team who did perform was Afghanistan.
Yeah, Afghanistan were magnificent. They're a well-supported team in the Caribbean. People love them because they played cricket the way the game should be played. They had the openers had 3 or 4. I think they had 300-run partnership plus, and then in the Super 8s, they probably had a 70 or 80-run opening partnership. For me, and that really was the best by any of the other teams in terms of consistency. The opening partnership. Now, when that happens, it gives Afghanistan a chance because their strength is in their bowling, and the openers were putting good totals on the board, and they were bowling well. So they were richly deserving of their performance. They were well liked by the people in the Caribbean, and they really deserved to get where they got to. Felt a bit sorry for them because that semi-final really was the worst possible pitch for them to ever play on. I don't think it was acceptable, that pitch, for a game of that magnitude. I mean, the bounce was terrifying, really. I believe if it was a test match, some players would have got hurt because there would have been a barrage of short pitch bowling, and obviously because it's a longer game, you'd have to try and hang in there. So, but that was a perfect pitch for South Africa. If they ever dreamed of a pitch to play the semi on, was that was it. The fast bowling that they had, and Afghanistan had the spinners. So Afghanistan had a really good tournament, and I enjoyed watching them.
Yes, their openers, Gurbaz was the leading run scorer of the tournament. Ibrahim, his partner, was the 5th highest run scorer. And Faruqi was the leading wicket taker at the tournament with 17 wickets. Yeah.
I mean, they all around they had a good tournament. As I said, bat, fast bowlers, spinners. They could not have done any more. As I said, really the conditions defeated them in that semi-final.
A fantastic tournament for the associate nations. Are they getting closer to the test playing nations?
I think that obviously the associates are improving all the way. This tournament, I think they got closer because of the reasons I said. The preparation of the big teams, which meant that they got closer. I mean, I think if the big teams had prepared properly, they would not have done so well. But this really gave them a good opportunity, to show their worth. And really, at the end of the day, I think they can be proud of what they've achieved as well. Particularly USA. They really stood up and to get as far as they did in this World Cup, their first one, was amazing.
Teams like Nepal, they took South Africa to one run. They very nearly won that game.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Nepal and teams like that, played well. I mean, even teams like Oman, Oman looked pretty good. I think, obviously, very new to this sort of competition. Hard place to play in the West Indies. I thought they prepared pretty well for the tournament. They had a 10-day camp in Barbados previous to the start of the World Cup. So they were doing all the right things that, as I said, the big teams were not doing. And, I think the smaller nations prepared well. USA would have had a lot of time preparing. As I said, Nepal spent, I think, about 10 days or so in St. Vincent and playing against the Windwards, etc. So they were serious. And obviously, Scotland and others. So the smaller nations, that's competition is one for them to shine, really. The T20, a lot of them don't play Test cricket, so the T20 is where they can make their name. They need to just play more and more against the international teams, and they will start to get better, and the gap will not be so wide. But this was a tournament for them to shine in, and that's what they did.
So it was good to have more teams in the competition, 20 teams.
Yes, I think it would have been better if the pitches were better in a lot of the places. The 20 teams would have worked better. A lot of the games, as you know, particularly in the US, were rain affected. That didn't allow the competition to flow as well as it should have. It was a bit bitty to start with. Really, the cricket really didn't start until the Super 8s, when something was on the line for every team, and that's when it really kicked in. So a lot of the early games, but in the US particularly, were, I wouldn't say high on the list, but they were, I think, because of the conditions. I think if they had perfect weather and they were playing all the time, it would have gathered momentum. But it took the Super 8s really to bring it to life.
I suppose logistically it was an achievement with all these different venues, countries to play a tournament.
No, listen, I think USA, did fantastic. I mean, to have, those stadiums that they built in, and the whole presentation was out of this world. as the theme song was for the World Cup, was, out of this world. I mean, they can really be very proud of what they put on. They can't control the weather. None of us can, but they did everything that they had to do, and did it well. And the team responded to that and gave them something to be very proud of. So I think as a cricketing venues, USA did really well.
But the pitch in New York could have been better.
Yeah, I think the pitch. I think most of the pitches there could have been better. Obviously, maybe the weather had an effect on that as well. I think the other thing that happened in this World Cup, which I'm not sure should happen in other World Cups. I was very unhappy with the situation that all those pitches in the World Cup, which had been lost, some had been relayed and out of commission for many months. None of them were practice matches were played on, so they were never tried, tested. So the games, the World Cup games, were the tests, and I think that was a mistake. I really believe that those pitches should have been played on. Then you would know whether a pitch needs more water, it needs more grass, it's a bit up and down. But, the first time you played on one of those pitches was when you actually got into the tournament. I don't think that was a good thing. I wouldn't like to see that repeated in other World Cups. I know in previous World Cups, there have been pitch testing matches before the World Cup. They test the pitches, obviously, but maybe the time frame that you've got to do now, and it was a rush tournament. There's no question about that. It was rushed straight at the end of the IPL. So many other things happening after that perhaps they didn't feel they had the time to pitch test. I think that was a mistake.
What do you think to people who say that the tournament was played in the rainy season?
Well, again, that's something that can be looked at. I guess it had to be played then, because where else would you find a window where those players from those nations would be available? There isn't a window. So really June was the only window. The IPL finished end of May. You got English cricket going on, etc., etc. June is perhaps not the best time for the Caribbean because it's the start of the hurricane season. And, but I can understand why it happened in June, simply because on the international calendar, there are no windows. But for me, a World Cup should not be rushed like that. I think a World Cup should take precedent over anything else, because that's what it is. It's a World Cup. You want to have the best players in the world playing against each other, not to be tacked on, at the back end of a tournament or just before another one. I felt on this tour, this one was like that. Any West Indian would tell you that, June is not a good time to have a World Cup.
And also got a question from Kenny Hutchinson, who now lives in Lanzarote. What did you think to all the 10:30 a.m. starts for the Indian team?
I think India were very lucky. If they needed luck, I don't think. I was a bit surprised that India had all those 10:30 starts. I think with the strength in the Indian team, I don't think they needed that extra incentive. I think India should have played like all the others, play some night matches, etc., etc. But things were very much in their favour. A gifted team like India don't need favours. I think they got enough quality in the team to conquer any situation, any condition. But I think the 10:30 start certainly favoured them amongst all the other teams, for sure.
Have the BCCI got too much power?
That's a very good question. This was an ICC tournament, so I guess ICC would have had the say. But I guess people recognize that the BCCI are the cash cow, really. BCCI and Indian fans provide, the finance for the game. So I guess they would not want to, I wouldn't say give them an easy run, but I would imagine that they will be more favorable towards the BCCI because, they're by virtue of, the number of Indians around the world and in India who love cricket. They have terrific economic value.
Interest-wise in the Caribbean, has it benefited cricket in the Caribbean?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the Caribbean, West Indians like to see the best players performing well. I think what they would have liked to see really was a West Indian team in the final. They started the competition, or before the competition, people in the Caribbean had high hopes of West Indies, not just getting to the final, but lifting the trophy. So that was an expectation. But I think generally, West Indian people warm to the World Cup and the eventual winners.
One person who was at the World Cup is Jenny Thompson on her World Cricket Tour, and she visited the Barbados Royals Girls Academy when they were taking a shipment of new kit from Grizzly Bear. She asked me to mention them. How much of an impact did it have on the girls?
Well, listen, the World Cup was fantastic for our girls' club. As you know, we have the first girls' club in Barbados, the Barbados Royals Girls Cricket Club, which I'm very proud to be the president of. In actual fact, the first girls' club in the Caribbean. And, we started off really with Oman. You may remember I went to Barbados with Oman, having organized a 10-day training camp for them. And, during those 10 days as well, we arranged for Oman to come and spend a morning, a Saturday morning at the club with the girls. And they were absolutely brilliant. I've never seen an international team get so involved with the players. They came and the whole team really took over the session individually. They did all the things with the girls. Dilip Mendes, who I know for a long time, a good friend of mine, is the coach. And I can't say anything more apart from the fact that they really started the scene well. They were absolutely brilliant. And as a result, the Barbados Royals Girls Cricket Club supported Oman because they went to all the games. Thankful. I got to thank Johnny Graves, the CWI, who provided the club with tickets to the games. Those girls went and had a fantastic time and just supported Oman through and through, because Oman played 2 games in Barbados as well. So it started there, and then really it developed from there. Yes, Jenny came. She came and obviously met the girls and had a great time, and then really culminated with the DP World event the day before the World Cup, which was fantastic. As you know, DP World were giving away throughout the World Cup. Every 100 runs that was scored by a team, the 10 kits were donating. So our club, we had to put on the event for DP World, which was Chris Gale was the icon, and DP World have been producing for the World ICC these container. There's some fantastic containers that they have been providing. And the containers are fitted out into be a dressing room with lights, changing areas for individual players, individual seats for them to sit and put their bags and everything. with the beautiful murals on the side, etc. And we were the beneficiaries of that. So this event was held the day before the World Cup. Then the container was moved from that night to Kensington Oval for the final. And now it's back at our ground at Friendship as a permanent thing for the girls. So the World Cup was perfect for us. We got so much out of it. And now there's a lot of passion for the girls to want to play cricket because, they were exposed, as I said. It started with Oman and they gave them real enthusiasm. And then they went and supported all the other teams' games as well. But Oman was their team. And then culminating with that and the World Cup final as well. It was great for that. And Jenny, we're communicating, and she had a really good time.
Fantastic memories for the girls.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable. And must not forget Chris Gale. Chris Gale was fantastic at the ceremony and the unveiling of the stuff. He really got involved, Chris, as well, and was fantastic.
And there's no one more enthusiastic than Jenny.
Oh yeah, she's absolutely mad about the game and traveling. She was terrific.
Let's move on then to the 3-test series, which starts tomorrow between England and the West Indies. You've already given your prediction of 1-1. Are you still holding to your prediction?
Yeah, I'm sticking to that, and even more so now, I think, with England's team selection for the first two tests as well. I think West Indies can win one of those test matches. Key really for West Indies is going to be, putting runs on the board. I think once they can put runs on the board, the bowling attack, particularly the fast bowling, I don't think spinners have had a great time in English cricket this summer. So, the fast bowling gives them a chance of getting a result, but they've got to put runs on the board. You can't get bowled up for 150 and expect to win a test match, even against an England team where, they've got a lot of players who are only just coming into the side. So, yeah, I still believe 1-1 is a good option.
But Ben Stokes doesn't do draws, as we know.
Well, yeah, but sometimes things are out of your control. It may be out of Ben's control. But no, it should be a good series. Let's hope there's good weather and we see some good cricket. West
Indies have got a new opener. What can you tell us about Mikael Louis?
Mikael Louis. Mikael Louis is a very interesting guy. I first met him about three years ago. And he was trying to get into the Leeward side at that time as a youngster. Wasn't making any headway. At that time I was a consultant for Argentine cricket, so I arranged for him to go to Argentina for 6 months. So he went to Argentina just to get some practice, just to be playing cricket. But he was a guy very young but driven. He would have seen he's got an elder brother, Jeremiah Louis, that's his brother. And Jeremiah Louis is on this tour as well. That's his first tour. So they're the two first players from St. Kitts ever to be part of the West Indies team. So he really took the first class season by storm. He ended up this year, his first season in first class cricket, scoring the most runs. He also did something that I can't remember being done in the Caribbean cricket. On his debut, he scored 100 in both innings. 2 games later, I think he followed it up with another 100. So in 6 games, he scored 300s and 4 scores over 50. So, he really pushed himself in his first season into the West Indies team. He's a very confident young man. he's not going to find it easy. His first tour of England, but he's had a good first class season. So I think he deserves this selection, and I hope that he can really get a chance to show that he can play.
He's going to be facing Jimmy Anderson in his last Test match. What did you think to the England selectors' decision to retire Jimmy Anderson?
Well, if Jimmy goes and gets a lot of wickets, will they still retiring? Well, they probably will. But yeah, listen, the last couple of years, particularly away from home, Jimmy's been accurate, but not devastating. He hasn't got a lot of wickets. He can still bowl quite tight. In English conditions, obviously, he's always been a handful. The question is, has he still got the appetite for the longer form of the game and also for, bowling many overs? I guess he's probably reconciled that. Yeah, the one game is going to be it, and I'm going to give it my all and then right off into the sunset. So he'd be hoping, obviously, to do well at Lord's. If this weather continues, I think he'd be very happy with the cloud cover that's around. He certainly would enjoy that.
England have got a new wicketkeeper as well in Jamie Smith. Have you seen him play or even keep wicket?
Yes, I have. I've been very impressed with him. The last 2 years, I've been fortunate to have done quite a number of Surrey matches commentary. I think I've done 3 this year as well. And on most occasions, he has featured and performed well. I like what I see in him. As a batter and a keeper. Bad luck on the previous keeper, but I think what Jamie Smith brings now to the team is, if he gets in, then he can not just go along, but he can accelerate the scoring rate, which was a problem, I guess, for folks that, he could bat, but he wasn't how can I put it? He wasn't somebody who could really take the bowling apart. And I guess with the situation with Bairstow as well, out of the setup, I guess England have gone for someone who they believe can, take on a similar role to Bairstow and be a batter and keeper. I wish him the best of luck. But what I've seen in the last 2 years, I think he deserves his chance.
Finally, getting back to the T20 World Cup, you said on episode 257 that there was a new sheriff in town. Do you think India will continue to win major tournaments from now on?
Well, listen, they will always be thereabouts. I wouldn't say they'll win all the tournaments. I don't think Australia is going to sit down and just let that happen. Obviously, Australia have got to change in certain formats now to come again, but they will be strong. They're competitive. India at the moment, there's likely to be a change also very soon in their setup. How long is Rohit Sharma going to play? How long is Virat Kohli going to play in all the forms? How long is the off spinner going to play? Ravindra. So they're going to change as well. But I think the good thing for them is that they got a lot of good young players, coming through, where they can obviously feed them gradually into the team. So they will remain strong, but I expect that some of the other teams will start to push them. I like the direction South Africa is going right now. 2 years ago, you wouldn't say that South Africa would be that important a team, but again, now they've got a pretty good bowling attack and got some batters coming through as well. So I expect that they will push along with England and and others. Pakistan, I'm a bit disappointed with Pakistan really, because They've got some quality players, but in tournaments they just don't seem to be able to get that cohesion over a prolonged period to do well. Hopefully they will get it right as well, because you don't want India just to be the main player in this international cricket. Really, they need people to compete against them. And India or Australia, you don't want two. I mean, that's bad for the cricket. But they're going to be up there. There's no question about that. You're going to have to play well to beat them. The only thing that can beat them would be complacency, or if they're tired or something like that. But you're going to have to play cricket to beat them.
But one of your overriding thoughts for this tournament is that teams need to prepare properly for a World Cup event.
Of course. I mean, listen, the old saying, you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. That holds true. A World Cup, you have to prepare. You can't just throw a team together just at the last minute and say, go on the pitch and perform to your max. No, you have to be more strategic than that. I understand that international schedules don't allow that type of preparation, but I think for a World Cup is special. It shouldn't be just like any other tournament. You should do things differently. West Indies are here playing the Test series now, starting tomorrow, and with a very young team. And the only game they've had is a 3-day warm-up game against, a select Kent side at Beckenham. I mean, is that the preparation for a Test match away from home? You got a very young team. Certainly not. But the schedule, the World Cup, had only just finished. I mean, most of those players, if not, most of those players were on the way here when the World Cup final was being played. And some were in the Caribbean. So, yeah, preparation is always key. If you get that right, you always have a good chance of performing well. It's something that teams are having less and less time to do that, and it will affect their performance. So you'll see a lot of up and down performances, simply because teams just can't get in the sort of practice that they need.
We must end the show with predictions, just to remind listeners that you went for the West Indies to win the T20 World Cup. You did have a few caveats. I'll give you that.
No, but I mean, I didn't say they would win. What I said is West Indies have a puncher's chance, and I'll qualify what I said they had a puncher's chance. I said West Indies had the individual players that if it came together they could win. But I did go on to say that the reasons why I didn't think they would win is because I don't think they would be prepared. The preparation was not going to be good enough, because they had too many guys sitting on the bench in the IPL inactive, and that would harm them throughout the tournament. And that's exactly what happened. And I was very right in that area, in that I felt that individual players, yes, but because of the lack of preparation, that as the tournament went on, it would be detrimental to them actually winning the tournament. I did say right from the start that India and Australia for me were the favourites, and again, that held true. But West Indies, if they were able to prepare, I think they would have given a much better showing. But the fact that those players were in the IPL, I don't agree that they should have been there, because they were not playing in the IPL. I think if those guys were back in the Caribbean preparing with the team, and those three guys who were playing regularly in the IPL came in, that means there would have been 12 players elsewhere preparing. I think they would have had a much better shot at going to the final and maybe winning the tournament. But as it stood, I didn't think really they had a chance because of because of that situation in India. It really wasn't perfect for a team hosting a tournament to be underprepared to win it.
Let's end with a football prediction, and it's the Euros semi-finals today as we record, and I'll get this podcast out ASAP. Who's going to win the Euros?
Well, I think the luck that England have had, if they don't win it, something is wrong. And in sport, like everything else, you need a bit of luck. And I watched that game, I think 2 games ago, when we're really less than 30 seconds they were on the way out, and found that equaliser and then won it the first minute in extra time. And sometimes your name is on the trophy, and I think this might be England's trophy, just by pure luck.
So who are England going to beat in the final?
To be quite honest, I haven't followed the last.
It's Spain and France today, and then England, Netherlands tomorrow. Yeah,
well, I mean, Netherlands is not going to be easy. I think England will need to play well, and they're going to need some luck because the Dutch will create chances. And if they take those chances, then obviously England have to play. France and Spain, I think that's going to be a very, very, very close contest. I think France might just edge that. But England got a chance. They have a chance. The luck is with them. So where the luck is with you, ride it all the way. So don't be surprised if England get to the final.
So it's Harry Kane to lift the trophy on Sunday.
Well, that it could be written already. That script could have been written, or your luck could run out.
Thank you very much, Roland, for coming back onto the Paddock and the Pavilion. Enjoy the Test match and enjoy your day out today, weather permitting, at the Legends match in Northampton. Yeah, I'm looking out the window now, and it's not looking too encouraging here. But maybe when you get up to Northampton, conditions that day will be better. But yeah, they've got 2 games today. That should be fun. Go and relax and enjoy watching some cricket. We've just had a World Cup in the rainy season. Well, it's the rainy season in the UK all the time. Well, this year in particular, I maintain the best weather we've had is the first week of the season. I remember that first game at Lord's where you had 1,400 runs scored in the game. That for me was perhaps the best weather. I was away obviously for a few weeks with Oman, and then I went to the ICC World Cup qualifiers in Italy as well. So I'm not sure what the weather was like during that period or the last 2 weeks when I was in the Caribbean. But generally, the rest of the time when I've been here, it hasn't been great, that's for sure. No, we're going to have some more wet weather because we're going to have a draw in this 3-test series. So, maybe it doesn't have to be a wet weather. It might be both teams play well on one Test match and it's a draw. But yeah, I think weather will probably intervene at some point in time and shorten the game. But I'm looking forward to the game starting tomorrow. I really hope West Indies can, get over those early nerves, because it's got to be nervous for a lot of these players. They've only read about Lord's, most of them. To be playing there now, playing in a Test match at Lord's, they'll be, some could be pretty nervous. I hope they can get over that nervousness and just really get into the Test match and show what they're capable of. Show the sort of fight that they did again in Australia against all odds. To go and really shock Australia in Australia. That's the sort of performance that they need to bring here. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult, but I think they'll be praying for the sun to come out there. Yes, I'm looking forward to going tomorrow. It's going to be a special day for Jimmy Anderson, his last Test, and a packed crowd at the home of cricket. Yeah. The crowd tomorrow will be there. I know sure they'll be rooting for Jimmy because he's been a great servant to English cricket. They will want him to go out on a high. So he will have very good support, not just family, but I think the cricketing public will be out
as you said, in their thousands to see this Test match, and to wonder whether what West Indies did in Australia was just lucky, or whether they've got the ability to give England a fight. I think they've got the ability to give them a fight, and tomorrow will be the start of that fight.
Well, thank you very much for joining me,
Stephen. Always a great pleasure, and look forward to the next one.
Sports Social Podcast Network.